Welcome back to the Bass Capital Radio podcast. I'm your host, Lara Wallace, and today I'm here with the lovely Jamie Howard, who somehow knew what our color schemes had to be today so we could match. I walked in and I was like, yes, all of it. This is like so visually pleasing to me.
To be fair, you could have worn a lot of different colors.
You're not
This would have
wrong,
gone very
but
well.
in my mind, you did this intentionally and nailed
Of course.
it. Thanks so much for being with me.
Thank you so much for having me. This
Absolutely. I have had the pleasure of seeing you do things from afar, from Facebook and over at Shasta's Place, and just a ton of different things, but mainly the Wild Souls Healing, which I'm super excited to talk about. But you do many things within that Wild Souls Healing. So
Yes.
before we can even learn about that, the rule is you got to tell me, how'd you end up in Putnam County?
So I used to say this, but I can't say it anymore. I used to tell people that I'm married into Palatka.
Okay.
Because
okay.
my husband, Jesse, was born and bred here. His entire family is
Born
here.
and bred.
So,
I'm
yeah.
using that, so you know.
So I used to say that I married into Palatka, but at this point I've been here for 20 years. So I don't think I can say that
not
anymore.
anymore. That one's out the window.
Actually, my family, my parents and I moved to Melrose when I was.
Love Melrose.
I do too, and they're
my
still there.
gosh.
They have fallen in love with that place long ago.
I've been out there a lot recently
So
for
we
the podcast.
went to Melrose initially, and so I started school. I went to Interlochen High School. I went to Price Middle School. So I've been in Putnam County for many years.
Right.
I just married into Palatka, but I've stayed
Right.
here because I fell in love.
Oh, well, you're definitely Putnam County then.
Yes,
Either way,
yes.
can't get out of that.
Yes.
No, Melrose is incredible. I have been spending a lot of time getting to know Mr. Mark Chiappini. Or Chiappini. I have to do that every time I say it, and I don't know why. It feels right. And his brother Robin, and then I set up and hung out at their store, which is really just like walking into like home. Like it is
Yeah.
Cheers.
Yes.
But
It's walking into 60 years ago too.
oh,
There's not much has really
absolutely.
changed.
No.
It held the beauty of that part of
Oh
old
my
town.
gosh. Yeah.
I love it.
It's amazing. And then I checked out Chiappini Farm,
Mhm.
which I cannot wait to share with everybody about that. As I pulled up and I was like, what in the dirt road? This is like all sorts of Putnam County here.
Yes.
Drove down definitely a one-way road, and I thought, is my map taking me to the wrong place?
Right.
And I got there, and it was like, if you're into plants, it was just magical. Like it's all Florida native plants, and then they were like, "Oh, here's a golf cart, enjoy."
Yeah.
And so you just drive around on the golf cart. So you must have had an incredible childhood if that was
I honestly,
home.
I really did. My parents still live in the same place. It's like a block and a half away from Lake Santa Fe, and it's just like these, towering oak trees, 100-year-old oak trees.
Right.
It's stunning. I mean, everywhere in our area, we are so lucky to live in such a stunning green part of Florida.
Oh my
It really
gosh.
is so beautiful here. But Melrose especially, I'm a little partial.
I can understand. Melrose is a gem, and uniquely so, being part of 4 counties.
Yes,
Like,
yeah.
well, Putnam we'll claim Melrose. That
Yeah.
can be ours.
Right.
Y'all can have the others.
That's funny because my parents actually live right on the Alachua side.
Oh yeah.
Like, I'm not kidding, like 2 or 3 blocks from where the county line is.
Oh wow.
So I couldn't just catch a bus. I had to walk over to.
Oh my goodness. I would have never thought about that.
Yeah.
So growing up, obviously, I say obviously, if you aren't familiar, Melrose is a very steeped in art community. Everything from the music to a ton of artists that they have living and residing there. They have the art walk every month. The Melrose Center is phenomenal. And again, that plus the community is incredible. So it would seem to reason to me that you grew up entrenched in just the artistic side of things.
So what's funny is as a kid, I don't really remember as much of that. And it could be that just wasn't as grown up as it, or right there on the highway maybe.
Right.
I don't remember them being right there, the galleries and stuff.
Yeah.
They could have been. I just don't remember that.
Right.
But I did feel like I was surrounded by music, which is the other side of the arts. That
Right.
Melrose is so rich in musicians and different places. There's live music playing all over that town.
Oh
all
yeah.
the time.
Yeah.
So I went in high school, middle school, I was in band. And so I do feel like that was something
Yes.
that was happening around me all the time. I wish that I had, I guess, noticed or been more exposed to the visual art side of it, because I was really interested in that
Right.
when I was that young. But I had no idea the resources that were around me
Yeah.
having to do with that.
Well, I think that's fair, and not, you're not alone in that. Putnam County residents, I I feel like have taken for granted, not as a whole, but there are
Sure.
folks who take for granted the river, the college that we have with all of the art. So I think when you grow up with it, it's not as like the wow factor where someone who hasn't had that exposure comes here and they're like, oh my gosh.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I'll ask you about what you do now, because I want to look at how you got there. So, where did you go? So you graduated high school. Where did you go from there?
So I graduated from Interlochen High School in the year 2000.
You were not too far off, sister.
Very proud. I went to college I had done dual enrollment, so I had some of my college done, but I really wanted to go to Gainesville. I don't regret that, but I don't know that I would make that same decision now. I was really anxious to get out of my parents' house, and I was excited to like stretch my wings. And
right.
So I went to Gainesville. I finished all of my college out there, and then, actually I didn't finish. I got more of a chunk out of it, and then I wanted to go on to finish my bachelor's, and so I went up to UNF in Jacksonville and actually lived on campus there. I did, after changing my major about 17 times, I did graduate with a bachelor's in art education, and so I finished college at UNF and then came back to Putnam County, at the time Beasley Middle School, to be an art teacher, and I got to do the like practicum and internships and stuff there. So when I graduated and finished all of that, I got hired on at the time River Breeze Elementary School.
Oh yeah,
as an elementary school teacher.
I think that would be so fun to introduce children at that age to art, and like their minds are so creative.
Yeah.
Was that the grade that you wanted to teach?
The funny thing is, and I'm sure everyone can relate to this, whenever you leave college, you're going to take whatever job you can get, right?
Absolutely.
So it would have been amazing if there would have been an elementary school art teacher position ready and waiting for me.
Right.
That was not my experience. At the time, I don't think any of the elementary schools had an art program. I could be wrong about that, but I don't think so. So I had done my certification and just regular education as well, just to make sure that I could get a job.
Right.
And so when they hired me at River Breeze, I actually started in an ESE class just to get a warm body in there.
Right.
I think I was like the second or third teacher that they had tried to keep in that position, and it was rough because the teacher turnover, it's still happening now, but even at the time it was rough. So I snatched that job up. I was just excited to dive in.
Right.
And that was baptism by fire. I wouldn't take it away because it taught me so much, but because I didn't really know what I was doing, I got to lean on what I enjoyed, and whether I was teaching ESE or second grade or first grade, there were a couple of years I got to actually teach art, but no matter what I was teaching, what grade level, I got to pull that into the curriculum.
Right.
Because it was sort of the language that I was speaking. So I just enjoyed being there. I loved those kids. I loved the relationships that I could build with their families. And River Breeze, it's not called that anymore, but River Breeze Elementary was like there's such a special place in my heart for that.
Oh yeah, your first,
it was like my first love.
Right. It's really a very special relationship that like you said, that trial by fire, you learn things there, and you learned what it meant to be in that position.
Yes.
And then again, I just think there's something special. Like I really enjoy. So as I say artist, I don't know what that even looks like, how to explain that, because I have an art studio at home. I don't have one particular. I really love Zentangle, and that doodling and whatever. But I also love painting. But I also love crafting. But I also love anything art related. So, all that to say, watching my kids, unlock their creativity
Yeah.
and their takes on art and what their minds can come up with. Like kids already have a beautiful and creative mind, but
Sure.
being able to like spend all day doing that,
Yeah.
I can imagine.
It was a dream. And I mean, listen, there's nothing easy about teaching. Education is hard, and there's so much to it that has so much more to do with the job than just spending hours a day with a group of kids. Like they become a part of who you are. You
Sure.
become a vital part of their life. So it's a relationship that you're building and nurturing, not just with the kids, but their families and this community. And so there was so much that I learned just about how to be a human in that experience, that everything that I did from that point on in the rest of my life, I still to this day pull from those experiences of being at that elementary school.
Oh my gosh.
Fresh out of college, thinking I was going to change the world. Like, I still pull from those experiences because I learned so much.
Right.
Incredible.
I mean, you changed the world through those kids in their own
Sure.
way. You know,
Sure.
magnitude is relative.
They changed me.
Yeah.
I mean, really, truly. Every year, with the new crop of kids coming through, and again, it's not just them, right? It's their families. It's a whole community. The influence and the learning that happens. They taught me probably way more than I taught them. Bless their heart. They really taught me about how to be a human, how to be kind, how to be patient. Oh my gosh, how to show compassion. Like I said, I pull from that period of time in my life all the time.
Right.
So grateful for that.
And how long did you teach for?
I was there. I think I was there for 5 years, 6 years. And like I said, there were a couple of years that I did actually get to teach K through 5 art, which was a dream, because the administration that I was working with at those 2 different times really just let me take the reins. And
Like whatever you wanted to do.
Really, and I got to build in what I was doing with them through visual arts with what they were reading about in their classrooms, and like make it this really holistic kind of experience.
You're bringing it to life.
Cool. Oh my gosh, it was so cool. So I think I was there 5 or 6 years. During that time, I got married. I went back to school. I went to grad school. Went back to UNF and did a master's degree in counselor education. So when I finished grad school, I got a job at Palatka High School. I was still, it's so funny to think about this because I'm 42 now. I think I was like 26.
Oh my gosh.
27, something like that. Like, I was young. So I got hired on at Palatka High School as one of the school counselors, and you talk about I didn't know what I was doing. I mean, fresh out of grad school, again, thinking that I knew everything and was going to change the world.
Right.
That was a whole new level of experiences that I could not have been prepared for.
It's funny. So I did substitute teaching for a little bit, and in the parapro course, it tells you like different sections on students and explaining like the difference between elementary, middle, and high school. And like I will tell you now, I was terrified of middle schoolers because of like they're in that hormonal stage where they're figuring out what the balance between authority and their own independence is. Where high schoolers, I do feel like sometimes it would probably be a challenge because they are like getting to know themselves and probably have some very valid points to bring to the table and dealing with more like adult-ish issues. So, and to be that close to their age. Like, but I'm sure
It's
that was a
crazy to
benefit though.
I think it did actually serve me at that time because I was I was literally brand new to it. I'd never done it before.
Right.
I do remember when I got hired on over the summer that I was petrified. And when I say petrified, I mean, I don't know if I thought they were going to eat me. Like, I was terrified. I went in and very quickly realized that just as in the elementary school, if I just focus on the relationships and just building some kind of communication between me and the kids, like, I was going to be okay.
Right.
I just needed to focus on that part. So the kids really, again, the kids were the ones that taught me that. And so there was so much to learn. They were also, I think it was district-wide, they had just started in Skyward, which was like their data collection, all that stuff. I didn't know anything about it because I was brand new to it, just like everybody else was. But on the counselor side of it, you're talking about like all the scheduling stuff. Oh my gosh, I felt completely overwhelmed, probably all the time. But
in the weeds,
all the time. But I do remember I was there for 4 years, and I worked predominantly with ninth graders for most of the time that I was there. So
that's a fragile age,
and it's a huge class. I mean, it's the biggest class on campus,
right?
And they're coming fresh out of middle school, and it was so funny because they were in the same position that I was in.
Right, right,
no
yeah, very valid
really
point.
So we were just sort of leaning on each other and figuring it out.
We'll get through this together.
Yeah. So I mean, it was hard, and there were lots of challenges, and there's nothing easy about the counselor's job, but.
No, I would want to take everybody home with me and like
developing relationships with the kids and their families and the community was, I mean, that was the gold mine.
Right.
So when I left Palaca High School, I went to Browning Pierce Elementary, and I felt like when I went to Browning Pierce, I didn't know that was going to be the last place that I was going to be in public education, but I feel like that was a really good way to sort of round out my career in public education.
Yeah.
Because it was sort of full circle.
Yeah, I was just thinking that. Yeah.
School, but also as a counselor.
But you can use art really to facilitate that.
I did all the time. Loved doing classroom guidance in elementary school. That was so much fun.
What is classroom guidance?
It's just basically where the counselor gets to go into the classroom and teach a lesson essentially, but it's usually social emotional learning, or gosh, I used to take a puppet with me and we would talk about like how to make friends and that kind of stuff. So it's like the very human experience of school,
right?
So being able to go in and do stuff like that was a joy, and I am so grateful for that period of time in my career.
Did you know when you went to Browning Pierce that was going to be kind of where you ended that career?
I didn't.
Okay.
I knew that after 4 years, they were kids that I started with at Palaca High School that I was watching them graduate. And again, I don't really know if this was a conscious thought necessarily, but looking back on it, I think somewhere in my brain, I was like, okay, I'm ready for a change. I'm ready for something new, which, about every 4, 5, 6 years, that's pretty typical. So I think I was ready for a transition of some kind.
Right.
When I got to Browning Pierce, I figured I'd be there as long as I was going to be there. Like, I was invested and absolutely loved the environment. The community out there is amazing.
That's where I substitute taught. Yep. And I loved it. I mean, I grew up going to Browning Pierce. That's that was my alma mater as a elementary career. But it was quite enjoyable, and I felt very supported. And I did ESC math tutoring, and that was a very unique experience. And when it's funny when you said every 4 to 5 years or whatever, like I thought about my personal life and how somewhat of a timer every 5 years. I'm like, I need to add a little change to it. Sure. And you can, I think you can stay in the same arena, because I could see me doing this forever. Oh, yeah. But changing what that looks like. Absolutely. Or adding something to it. Yes. That kind of made me wonder, well, I got 3-4 months in so far, so we got a little bit before we see what we fold into this. But
this is not going to be quotable, by the way, because I don't know where I'm getting this from, but I feel like I've heard it somewhere, and I just sort of stuck in the back of my brain. Is something like every 6 or 7 years, we change. Like, our bodies are different, our personalities shift a little bit. So the fact that we want change more than often than that, but especially after that period of time, is perfectly natural. It doesn't mean that everybody has to change careers every 7 years. That's not what I mean. You don't have to change your spouse every
Employers 7 years. Right now are like, don't watch this video.
No, but there is something about your existence that is ready, you're ready for a shift or a stretch in some kind of way. So by the time I finished at Browning Pierce, which again, I didn't know that's what was going to happen, but it was about 14 years total of my career in public education, and so that felt right. Like, I knew it was time. I didn't really think about it going in, but I knew when it was time for a shift, I was ready.
I just had an aha moment. You were the guidance counselor.
Yes.
I don't know what just happened. So, family, listen. Um, I'm not always quick to the draw. There's a lot going on up here, but I just had the aha moment that you were the guidance counselor when my kids were in school. And I distinctly remember being in your office at some point. So
Yes.
you did a wonderful job.
Thank you.
Oh, dear.
I
Okay.
remember you. I didn't want to say anything because
No,
I
no,
remember that.
no. Go ahead and let it out. Well, who knows? I probably needed to be in that office at some point. Um, what led you to, like, what were you going to do after that? So obviously there was at some point you decided it was time to transition out. Was that something that came organically through the school district, or was that something that you were like, all right, I know what I want to do from here?
I think what was happening for me at the time was this is a personal stuff that was going on, but my husband and I were trying to get pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a lot, which has that part of my story has everything to do with why this business exists the way that it exists right now. So it's all part of it. But there was something happening in me where I recognized that in order to really take care of myself, like my physical body and also my mental and emotional health, in order to do that in a way that I really needed to change the kind of stress and pressure that I was under.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want to recognize that I had and still do have the privilege to be able to make a decision like that, because not everybody is in that position. So I want to acknowledge that. But my husband was incredibly supportive in that I knew that I needed to make a change. Like I knew that I needed to not just shift my environment, but I needed to be in something that I had a little bit more freedom, and less pressure. And anybody who's ever spent 2 hours in a public school classroom, the pressure is like it's unimaginable, because you're not just doing a job, like you're shaping the future.
It's only a human's future. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, no big deal.
So there's like the pressure of like, state mandates and all that stuff, but it's also just the job itself there's a lot that goes into it. And I think in that moment I recognized that I wanted to be helpful and useful to people, but man, I had to do something different, because I didn't know how to exist and still be able to breathe. I was having a really hard time with anxiety. I was having a really hard time like regulating stress, and I could tell that was impacting my health, physically and mentally. And so
for sure.
So I had to make a change, and again, I happened to be in a really amazing situation where I was allowed the space to leave and go, I think I'll start a business, having no idea how to run a business. I had no clue what I was doing.
That sounds like a good idea. Let's do that.
Seems like a great idea. And so I just sort of dove off the cliff. And because I had so much support, and I obviously, have experience in counseling, coaching felt like a transition that made sense for me.
Kind of a natural.
Even though I had no idea what
right. In your mind, it was going to work out perfectly. Going back to that, I think it's so true. First, I want to say thank you to all the teachers who are helping mold the future of our babies, but of our world, like our society. My mom was a substitute teacher when I was a child, and then she was a teacher's assistant, and then she decided, I want to go back to school and I want to get my teaching certificate. And she did that in her 40s, incredibly proud of her. And she was in the classroom for, I don't feel like it was that long for she was like, this is too much paperwork. Like, it is so hard to teach and to do all this, and it became very overwhelming. She ended her career as a school nurse, which was always very interesting to me, because my mom was like, a Band-Aid will fix everything. Here's an ice pack, whatever. But she was excellent at it. Everybody loved Nurse Gigi. But just seeing her struggles in that, and, especially I can imagine with counseling, like how hard that would be emotionally, mentally. Like, you're carrying around everybody else's baggage, but these aren't like adults.
Right.
They're children, and often, like, whatever that child is going through, you may or may not have the resources or ability to help them.
Yes.
And I remember, with one of my kids growing up, based on certain health, issues, they had some delays in being able to keep up with those grades, and I felt like I was fighting an uphill battle all the time, like, for resources, for understanding. And I remember leaning heavily, and I have always, on, like, the guidance counselors.
Yeah.
And what do I do, because they're, my child's doing the best they can, I'm doing the best I can, and certain things just aren't clicking the way that traditional education means that they have to click.
Yeah.
And that's hard in itself. So multiply that by however many students.
Right.
And no wonder you felt that,
It was a lot. I felt like I knew why I was there. Like, I knew why Jamie was there. But I was also having to look at why the country or the state thinks that school counselors are there. And this is not really that episode. We could talk about that at another episode. But they didn't match up.
Okay. You just did not, your ideals did not align. Okay. I get that.
There were times when it was perfectly aligned, and there were times when it was not. So I recognized that there were ways I really wanted to show up in support for these kids and their families, and even the teachers. But it's FCAT time, or it's...
That's immediately, that's what I was thinking about when you said that. I was like, I wonder if she's referring to something like that.
And listen, I'm not saying that none of that stuff matters. I'm just saying that when the rubber met the road, there was a point where I thought, okay, I wonder if it's time, instead of me being so focused and being the soldier on the front lines, what if I can be the person that helps support the soldiers on the front lines? And
which is equally as important.
Exactly. And that felt like a natural transition for me.
Right.
So it was appropriate and actually really validating that when I left and I started my own practice, that a lot of my clients were teachers. And
oh my
parents
gosh.
And kids.
So it worked out.
It did.
Well, that'll bring us to why we're sitting here. Though there are many reasons I want to sit down and talk with you. So Wild Souls Healing.
Yes.
I guess I really want to know where that name came from and why you chose to take it into, like, your own business.
Yeah. Have you ever heard the term rewilding? Have you ever heard that word?
I have not. I don't know that I have. But you're going to tell me
know,
about it.
You probably do know what it is. Essentially, it's the process of allowing something to exist in its most natural form without trying to change or influence or program it a certain way.
Okay.
So if you think about, like, when it rains every other day and you're trying to, and you look out on your lawn and it's rewilding itself.
Okay. Oh, that's perfect. That's actually a perfect. My lawn right now is rewilding.
Yes,
I pulled up when I got home. I was like, I need to not unwild my lawn.
So I loved the idea of helping. Well, I'll just put it in terms of my own personal experience. I love the idea of getting back to a place for me where Jamie could exist and feel safe existing as Jamie is before everybody told her who she was supposed to be. Which, I want just a little caveat to that. It doesn't mean that the way that we influence each other is bad necessarily, or, as you grow and develop, you learn how to exist in different environments differently. There's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
But I was really fascinated. I was fascinated at the time with this idea of, okay, now I'm starting completely fresh. I have no idea what I'm doing. And so instead of having this, like, map put in front of me with the prescriptive, this is what you're supposed to do and how you're supposed to act and how to think and how to talk, now you're on your own, kid. Like, figure it out.
Right.
That was fascinating to me, to find the piece of me that wanted to exist just, like, weird and kind of wild and strange and funny, but also incredibly loving and raw and vulnerable. To create a space where I could exist that way meant that there had to be some healing that happened. And so in my mind, the idea of Wild Souls Healing means that in order to really recognize the kind of wild parts of you that aren't as heavily programmed or influenced by all the rules that exist out there has to be some healing that has to happen before that can really, before that transition can really take place. So that's where the name
is amazing. I love that. I love that whole story. And realistically, like, I could imagine. I guess I could imagine in some sense. Like, I do have, some, what we're going to do is this podcast, and this is how it's going to look. But deciding, like, who am I going to talk to? What are we going to talk about? How's that going to look? That in itself was challenging. But I can imagine, like, we are kind of programmed at a young age where this is how you're supposed to behave in this setting and whatever. So to not, first of all, start a business, like, and that's a challenge in itself. Just even if you just looked at filing taxes, that in itself. But to then figure out how you're going to carry yourself and market yourself, all while working through what that looks like based on society's expectations and what you need.
And my own personal journey.
Right.
And that's what was so, it still is part of the experience for me. What's been so interesting about this whole idea of marketing myself. I can't, oh my God, all the webinars I watched, jeez Louise, all of the classes that I watched on Zoom or things, seminars that I listened, oh my gosh, everyone telling me what I should do to make sure that you get that 5-figure a month business or 6-figure a year, whatever. Listen, if that's you, great. Congratulations. Clearly that was not me.
Right.
That didn't happen. That's never happened. What I noticed, though, is if I quit trying to focus so much on, like, the formula, the marketing formula for an industry, like, because it is an industry, life coaching.
10 to 10.
And self-help. For the industry to flood me with all of the clients, in order for that to happen, I had to follow this prescriptive thing.
The same thing you were trying to get away from.
Oh my gosh, yes. And I clearly was not very good at it. Like, it just wasn't happening. So what I learned is that if I just focus on me showing up as me, that is, it's going to match up with the people that want that, and it's not going to match up with the people that don't want that.
Right.
So I tell people all the time, like, I'm not the right life coach for everybody.
Right.
And sometimes you don't know that until you have a conversation with me. And you're like, ooh, I don't know, thanks.
Not from past.
And I get it. Like, I understand that. I'm not for everybody. Everybody's not for me.
Right. Not everybody.
Is that every time that I show up as me, just as vulnerable and raw as I feel safe enough to be in whatever environment, the people that I sort of pull into my world that become a part of this really amazing living, breathing thing, it does match up with where they are. It does meet their need. And that's been really cool, is that the billboard for Wild Souls Healing is it's just me. I mean, it's just me.
You are the billboard.
Walking around being me.
Yeah, and I love that. I love that you understood that concept. I was thinking about, like, Pepsi versus Coke. Like, not everybody likes Pepsi. Not everybody likes Coke, and that's okay.
Sure.
And heaven forbid, like, everybody was like, you're the one for me. Like, how could you take care of everybody?
Right.
That's unrealistic. No. But to just be able to be yourself and to find people that you can serve and still be yourself.
And that's the thing, is that if I were to expect, if I was the right coach for everyone out there, that's a really good indicator that I'm not being authentic.
Right.
Because think about how different we are, think about how different all of our needs are and the different places that we are in our life. If I'm the right coach for everybody, chances are I'm either not going deep enough or I'm not being really authentic to who I am. Because if I can match up with just anyone.
Right.
It's sort of like generic cola. You know what I mean?
Yeah. The undescript box or the undescript bottle. When you started, I mean, I guess, how do you even market that? Like, not market that. I mean, I guess it would be market that.
Yeah.
How do you let people know, like, all right, guys, I've left the school system. Let me tell you how to be the best you. Like, how's that work?
I still don't really know.
Okay. That's an acceptable answer.
At the time, I had no idea. Like, I didn't really know what to do. I knew that I knew that I really enjoyed teaching,
Mm-hmm.
obviously. So what felt natural for me was to start doing workshops.
Okay.
And so I would.
And when was this, by the way?
This
Like, when
was
is
2016.
2016? Okay.
Yeah, so I left the school district in, I think it was July. It was during the summer. I think it was July of 2016. So by that fall, I just sat down at home, which, by the way, that first school year, as the school year kicked off and I wasn't going to work, was wild.
Yeah.
That was bonkers. Yeah. I cried all day.
Did just the adjustment? Yeah.
Yeah, because I was like, well, what am I supposed to do?
Right.
So, like, that sort of pushed me to be like, okay, well, I got to get to work. Like, something's
Right.
going to happen. I got to do something here. So I sat down at my desk at home and I just wrote a list of things that at this point in my life I was either struggling with or interested in. And I
Okay.
used that list to build a workshop series on these different things. And one of the things that kept coming up was like this idea of authenticity. What
Okay.
does that mean, and how do you do it?
Yeah.
Like, how do you do that when you're so programmed to show up as this prescriptive character? Like, how do you
almost
show
a
up as
necessity
you?
in some
Yeah.
places.
So I built a workshop series off of that, and I then, shout out to all my friends, I then started hitting up all my friends, and
I was
like,
going to ask that.
will you come to my workshops, please? That's how it started, honestly. And the more I trusted that process to just show up and be myself, and to teach, not as if I had figured out something that everybody else hadn't,
Right.
but just support people in that way. Then they started telling other people, and those other people started telling other people, and so this business has always been built on word of mouth.
Right.
And believe me, I've paid the money for the marketing and the blah blah blah. I don't know that it was useless, but the business has grown. The community of Wild Souls Healing has grown.
I see that.
Just
yeah.
word of mouth, really, truly.
I think especially in Putnam County, like, word of mouth is so huge.
Yeah.
And I think what you're doing is super unique too to Putnam County. Like, I can't really think of, and forgive me if you're out there watching it and you're doing something like that, hit me up for an interview.
Yeah.
But I haven't really seen anything quite like what you're doing. And I want to talk more about that. But, having a workshop, I guess when I think about what that looks like, you're essentially writing out like your own personal journey and then sharing that with someone and just sharing like what works and what didn't work. But what you have is that education behind it of knowing how to deliver that and work through the things that come along as you conquer those things or you better yourself in those things.
Yeah. What I notice, I mean, I guess this is probably a skill set, but it's something that comes very naturally to me, is I notice that I have a gift of being able to hold a space for someone that feels really safe, that allows them to be really raw and vulnerable and feel icky and to talk about things that are icky, that don't feel good to talk about. It's something I really pride myself on, and is that I have the gift to be able to kind of hold that space and allow them to feel supported without feeling judged, and also not necessarily having all the answers on how they can fix that.
Right.
Whatever, if there's a problem or something to work out. It's not really about that. It's just about holding a comfortable container. Actually, it's not comfortable all the time. A safe container.
Right.
For someone.
So sometimes it's really just about getting out what's in there, I'm sure.
Yeah. I tell people all the time that a lot of the work that I do with individual clients, just one-on-one, is half of it's like word vomit, where you just kind of show up and dump out whatever you're thinking, feeling, experiences.
Which is very helpful, by the way.
It is. It
to
really
do
is.
that.
It really is. And having the space to do that without there being this expectation that I'm going to change all of that or fix all of that before I leave here. Like, or I'm going to have a plan. I'm going to have all these action steps on how I can.
Because we type A's love plans. So,
I mean,
yeah.
If that happens, great. But that's not really the point.
Right.
The point is to, at least in my work, the point is to show up, Dump out what you got. Give me all you got.
Mm-hmm.
Now, where do you want to go? We can talk about how to get there, but how are you standing in your own way between here and there? That's kind of the juicy stuff. That's the meat that we're really working on. And so, no, at the end of every session, you haven't figured everything out necessarily, but half the work is just feeling safe enough to dump out all the crap
Right.
that is the sludge that's kind of standing between you and what you want to feel,
Right.
or where you want to be.
And
that's really the work.
Right. And sometimes, like, I'm just trying to envision, like, being a client of yours, you know, or, thinking about how that actually works, dumping out that sludge. I think a lot of times, like, you have a idea of the things you want to change or a goal in your mind. And a lot of times it's just getting through the day to day. Like, I get up, I'm going to work. I deal with whatever's at work. I get home, I do all the mom things, whatever I have to do. I'm not having time to sit down and process, like, actually think about why has XYZ not happened, because I'm so busy just existing and dealing with that. So being able to have a space, like you said, that you can feel comfortable processing all of that, and with someone who you feel like genuinely cares.
Mm-hmm.
Because you wouldn't be in it if you didn't care.
Right.
I can imagine how beneficial that is to somebody.
Someone who is also objective too, right? So I'm not embroiled in your life and like all the things that are going. So I'm just a mirror. I'm just a container, and so along with that comes, like, I'm not judging you for whatever you feel. Right. Whatever you're experiencing is, but I'm also sort of a bird's eye view too. Mm-hmm. So I'm not in it with you, and that's why. I mean, like, I have my own coach. My husband is not my coach. Right. There's a reason for that. Not that he's not great at it. Not that he's not a fantastic listener and super supportive, but...
Shout out to the husband.
Oh, my God. Jesse Howard. Lifesaver for so many people. But he's in it with me, and so it's hard for him to see things objectively sometimes. Mm-hmm. He's actually really good at it, but when we're in it... Right. I need someone that's on the outside looking in, that's going, okay, what I heard you say does that feel true? Like, is that where you're at? Right. And that being able to be that for other people, I think, is really helpful. Absolutely. It's amazing. Some people don't have that kind of support, and so first of all, it's amazing that you do, but somebody who isn't so close to the fire and who, like, realistically, their job is to be objective and not like, okay, if you don't do this, it's not going to directly impact me. Right. And if you don't work through this, it's not going to directly impact me. Mm-hmm. But I want to see you succeed, so I'm going to lay it out there in front of you. Sure. I think that's... I don't think that... Maybe more so now than before, but has really been appreciated, that having that space to do that. But I do think mental health or personal growth has really come a long way. Oh my gosh. From where it used to be. Yeah, for sure. The fact that you can run that you can have this type of business when maybe, I don't know, I'm just throwing out a number, but 20 years ago that would be like, oh, that's woo-woo whatever stuff. Yeah. I still get that sometimes, but it's okay. I mean, but really, like, well, let's pause for a second before we get into that, because that's a point that I'd like to talk about. But what is it that you do? Okay, workshops, I understand you're sharing concepts, whatever. But what is it that Wild Souls Healing provides? So as a whole, it's a community. Okay. So within the Wild Souls Healing kind of bigger, larger mission, there's individual coaching and there's retreats and there's workshops and that kind of stuff. But as a whole, it's a community, because the vision that I have, the dream that I have, is a community of people. Right now it's mostly women, but that's not because it has to be. A community of people that communicate with each other honestly, mm-hmm. that support each other in a way that doesn't deplete either person. Mm. We're talking about interpersonal, like, relationships, right? Right. A community that feels as supportive as, this might be a little controversial, but as supportive as what some people go to church for, like they're looking for that kind of
Fellowship.
Yeah. As supportive as that, without any kind of requirement on who you have to be or how you have to show up.
Okay.
That's kind of the dream, is this community of people that really love each other, that support each other that way.
I think we all
Yes.
want and need
Every
a sense of
human
of community, of belonging,
Yeah.
of a place that you can be yourself.
Sure.
You know, so I love that, and I see on Facebook, which we'll leave links to everything we talk about as always. But I see on Facebook you doing these retreats where people are able to come together and be their, in authentic selves with one another. And so I think about my daughter going to school. And they're all all my kids are in high school now, and worrying about being judged for maybe she likes anime, or maybe she's really into this certain style and somebody giving her a hard time for that. And all my kids have different degrees of like, I am who I am, and wanting to fit in. But I think whether we're in our teenage years or comfortable adults, know that in certain settings, like you have to behave and feel like you have to be a certain way to go, like when you get home and kick off your shoes and you're like, all right, let me let my weird out, let me just be who I am, and not have to apologize for it. And unfortunately, some people don't have that at home. Some people don't have that at all, but you created a whole a space where you can not only have that within just being able to meet other people, but then these weekend retreats where you can spend the whole weekend being yourself with other people who share that same value.
Yeah, the retreats are really special. I started them in the very first year that I started the business, actually, because
you went big.
I went big. I dove in. I jumped off the cliff.
Workshops, retreats.
That's right. It was really my way of just sort of slinging stuff up against the wall to see what stuck.
Right.
I have been so incredibly fortunate, and I mean completely blessed, to have a community of people that believe in me, that support me, and that really believed in this business. They wanted to see it succeed. They believed in the vision. And so I have a friend of mine who was my very first individual client, actually. She was getting ready to retire, and she was terrified. And was like, this is going to be rough.
I can imagine.
I need help.
Yeah.
And she'd been, of course, like most people, she'd been working in that field for 35, 45 years. So she offered up her home, also in Melrose, because Melrose is magical. She offered up her home as a retreat space. And so
I love that.
So we still, to this day, we did the retreats at another location a couple of years, but we are still doing retreats at her home.
Oh.
And it's small groups, 4 or 5, 6 at most, ladies that come together, and we create this really incredible bubble to dive deep and do some stuff that is stretching. You know what I mean? Like it's, you don't grow unless you're a little bit uncomfortable. So like there's aspects of that where you're really stretching yourself, but because of people like her that have continued to support and really lift me in this business up, we've been able to do stuff like that. So that, the retreats are really special. They're about 3.5 days of I tell people it's like coaching with me, but like in a group setting, and also like on steroids.
Okay.
We go real deep. We are in there. So it's not for the faint of heart, for sure.
I think there's a value in having that group setting.
Yeah.
And I think that ability to, so if you think about traditional counseling, an hour and a half every week, every other week, every month, however, whatever frequency.
Right.
Spending your whole lifetime of wherever you're at. And then, okay, I've got to work through all of that, and I have an hour.
Right.
And there's, I think some people may not understand um, may not have ever allowed themselves to connect with that, I guess. Like, never said, oh, you just keep going. You just keep
Yeah,
going.
for sure.
And I think, like, retirement's a huge change.
Huge.
You go from being connected, depending on where you're retiring from, but traditionally speaking, being connected to a group of people who have like-minded goals, because the goal is to get a paycheck and you're
Right.
working for the same company. And a lot of times that's your identity.
Yep.
You know, we get very wrapped up into you know, our business being us and us being our business, whether it's ours or not,
Sure.
and seeing people every day to, like you said, the first day of school. Well, what do I do now?
Exactly.
So.
It's such a good point. I'm glad you brought that up. I was literally working with a client today having this conversation. It's so easy to attach your sense of value as a human to the role that you're serving.
Right.
And so whether it's a job as like, I go to this office and I, you know, do this specific job, or a job like I'm a mom, I'm a caregiver, whatever it is, it's so easy to attach our sense of value to that.
Right.
That when that changes, kid goes off to college. Now you don't have a kid at home. Like,
right.
Or you retire, or you change jobs. It's so easy to get lost in the idea that if my value was about that and now that's different, what is my value, or worse, do I even have any?
Right. Right.
And that right there, that question, for me personally, and my husband and I went on our journey of trying to have a baby, that was the journey that I had, that I went on.
Right.
That sort of the business kind of developed through that personal journey, because
right.
we don't have any human children. We still don't now. I never did get pregnant. And I had so much of an idea that, like, my purpose, listen, this is going to sound like 1800s right now, but I felt like my purpose as a woman was to get pregnant, have a baby, be a mom.
I don't think that I can see why you say it sounds 1800s, really but it is, I mean, throughout history, and you know, our history looks much different the last however many years than now, but that is what we do. That belief, functionality,
really deeply drilled into me.
Right.
And when it wasn't happening, and it was 8 years of infertility, when it wasn't happening, I remember having a moment where I literally looked myself in the mirror and I thought, okay, if I'm not here to be a mom, then why am I here? Like, what does any of this mean?
Right. Right.
And I remember thinking, all right, clearly I have some value.
Right.
We're not going to that dark place. So then it just means I have to redefine what value means for me.
Right.
Which is a hard process, and it's not something that there's like instruction manuals written out there for.
Gosh, wouldn't it be great if there was, though?
Right?
It'd make things so much easier, though, and it might help you out, really. So.
Yes. Actually, yes. So that's the journey I think everybody is on to some extent, depending on where they are in their life, and that's the juicy stuff that I really love about this work.
Oh, I can imagine how fulfilling it must be to have somebody who their way of thinking has got them to this place that they are now like, I have to reach out for help.
Yeah.
And through what you're doing, they are able to redefine their whole lives, like who they identified as, and really give them a new lease on life. You know, I think about the things that I've gone through personally, and you know, my husband tells me all the time, like, what are you going to do when the kids are gone? Like, I have so much value as a person, like, oh, I just want to be a good mom and a good wife. Like, and I think that's admirable, like, to want to be a good but to know that, like, for me, getting up every day and making sure that my kids are taken care of, and every night that they're happy and that we've spent one-on-one time together and we've done all this, like, I'll sacrifice taking care of my own self to take care of them. And he's like, at some point, you're not going to be everyday mom. Right. And I was like, don't you say that. We're not talking about that. Or, you know, I've always taken a lot of pride in my work. And to know, like, okay, well, what if Lara didn't exist in this realm? Like,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I would need help with that too. Like,
Sure.
how you move through that. So,
Yeah.
you know, is there such a thing as like preventative care? Like, your people come to you before it gets to like I often think about like a counseling or that kind of coaching is like I've gotten to a point where I know I'm failing. How do I get out of here?
I appreciate that question so much.
Mhm.
So there's like, I feel like there's probably lots of reasons why people come or look for coaching. One is to figure out a problem. Like
Right.
they identify, well, I'm having a really hard time. This
Right.
I'm going through divorce. Like this thing is kicking my
Right,
butt,
right.
and I don't know what to do. Then there's also like, I feel like I'm not in like a hard place necessarily, but I would like to just sort of maintain. So I'm
Mhm.
coming for maintenance.
Right.
I think what you're talking about is the idea that I don't. It's not like I'm not in crisis. I feel okay. Things are trucking along.
Right.
I don't even have anything necessarily to like bring up to you, life coach, as like help me
Right.
with this. But I feel like that person in that place recognizes that they don't have to do anything alone. Like, could you do a lot of things alone? Sure. You don't have to.
Right.
And so literally just having someone in your back pocket that's like cheering you on, like a guidance counselor for adults. It's like cheering you on and really helping you clarify things as they come up. Of course, I think that's a good idea. And I
Mhm.
think it's an aspect of this that people don't really recognize because you don't know that you need help until you're,
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
flailing.
Like
But
it's not
but
like
that's not
you're
necessarily the case for everybody. So
yeah. It's not like you're gonna wear a like a life vest when you're walking through the parking lot
right.
because oh well no, that's not necessarily
Right, right.
And maybe fashion is something else. Maybe you
Right.
are wearing a life vest walking through the parking lot, but you're not looking for that necessarily as you're going through everyday life. But I
Sure.
think that there is something back to your point about your husband. Like he could be your cheerleader, he
Mhm.
can be a great support, but there's something about having someone with an outsider's perspective.
Yeah.
And especially if you've gone through things, having someone who maybe you're not in crisis, maybe you've come a long way,
Yeah.
but this person can talk to you about your day, and then all of a sudden something comes up,
Yes.
and you're like, oh, well, now that I've worked through these things, I can get to that thing.
Yes.
Because, depending on how life, the path that it took you on.
Right.
Who knows, what could be laying under there that you could
Right.
maybe tweak something or address that and have an even more authentic or quality of life.
Yes, and we also I talk to my clients a lot about this idea of fulfillment.
Mm-hmm.
And listen, humaning, like this lifing thing is
Mhm.
is hard.
Mm-hmm.
There are lots of good days, but I don't know that there's ever been a day that I've experienced where everything I felt fulfilled, like all of my needs felt fulfilled.
I get what you're saying.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's not like you're looking for a problem necessarily, but I like the idea of sort of checking in with yourself in these different life areas, like love and relationships, or health and body, or family, friends, and community, or my career, or my financial experience. What level of fulfillment am I on today?
Right.
On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being totally fulfilled, absolutely satisfied, where am I at with that
Right.
today? I use that as a check-in,
Mhm.
not just for myself, but for my clients to sort of recognize I don't know that there's ever a time where everybody's at a 10 in every level, of every
That'd be
piece of our
stellar,
life. I
but
think that would be great. I don't
Right.
know how realistic that is, but I do think that we are looking for a sense of balance. So
right.
maybe everything's not at a 10, but if you've got like a 6 and a 4 and a 1, clearly that's an area of your life that's really asking you to pay attention.
Right. Right.
If my body is hurting, my health sucks, and when I get up in the morning, I'm not feeling good,
Right.
then, something's screaming out for my attention. That's a need that needs to be met. So I think that kind of like preventative care that you're talking about, I
Mhm.
think that's really something that coaching is really good at, is not creating problems or like trying to poke holes in things, but
Right.
just recognizing where's the need that's not being looked at right now,
Right.
that's not being met.
Is there a point where somebody would like come in and, well, I guess you do the group stuff.
Yeah.
Do you do You do individual stuff as well, right?
Yes.
Okay. And then do you have a like a shop or a store? Like I say, a storefront. I don't put that in a bag. I wish you could. Do you have a office that you operate out of?
So it's funny, I get asked this question all the time. I thought at the beginning of this journey that it was necessary to have like a location where people could come,
Mm-hmm.
an office with a couch and a chair. Where I
A
would
black
sit with a
couch at that.
clipboard.
Yeah.
Um, and because of just overhead expenses, like that just wasn't doable.
Right.
So when I first started, it was over the phone. I still have clients that I only meet over the phone because they live in other states, other countries.
Mm-hmm.
Then Zoom became a thing, and so I meet with clients that way. But a number of people local really wanted to meet with me face to face, and so the only option I had, because I didn't have an office, was my home. And I thought, this could be terrible because I'm not real great at cleaning, and messy. Like, we have dogs. Like, how is that going to work? One of the most beautiful parts of this experience has been welcoming clients into my home. That therapy, there's a place for it, and I think I love working alongside people who are also working with a clinical mental health therapist. But there is something really special about going to sit in someone's living room with their dogs who are like snoring and farting in front of them. You know what I mean? And there's like, that's my kitchen, and
Right.
I'm not in like a lab coat. You
Right.
know what I mean? We're sitting, the television is right. I think there's something really homey and personal about that I've just held on to. Like, I've had opportunities to have an office and a place where I meet with people, and it doesn't feel the same. So
I can imagine.
yeah,
Yeah.
I have clients that come to my home.
Yeah, it's the
and
farting
love
dog
it.
for me.
Of course.
So you are not a licensed like therapist,
Correct.
right?
Correct.
But so you are able to do counseling.
Yes.
But like you would never be able to prescribe a medication or diagnose.
Absolutely.
You're just there to support as somebody walks through their own exploration.
Correct. And I actually have a release form that I make all my clients sign, making sure they understand that.
Right.
I am not a mental health therapist. I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm certainly not a doctor. So everything that we talk about is for educational purposes only. It's just support. And like I said, most of my clients also have like a team of medical professionals. They have a doctor that helps them with anxiety, and if they need medication, if that's something that they're doing, I'm part of that team. But in absolutely no way is the service that I provide a supplement or it is a replacement for any of that. Not at all. No.
And you're able to connect or give them the information they need to give to their doctor to make that whole.
Yes.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that has a value in itself, where it removes that pressure from, I would assume, from you to have to diagnose and all the paperwork and all that, and you could just show up and be about that moment and whatever happens in there, and then give coaching based on that.
Well, and the thing is, I'm not interested in what your label is. I'm not interested in the diagnosis. Not to say that didn't serve a purpose. I mean, I get it, but that's not. I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in your experience of being a human right now, because my whole point is that I want you to leave here feeling like you've got at least one foot firmly planted on the ground again. Right. Because they usually walk in feeling like they're drowning. So I don't really care about what medicine you have to take or what letters are attached to. Like, it doesn't matter. Right. It's just about your human experience right now.
Right. I love that. That makes sense. I want to go just see what it's about. I want to go meet the farting dogs. And
Lando and Cooper, they're celebrities in their own right.
So during a one-on-one with you, what are some type of things that you do to help? Is it just all like sitting down dialoguing like this? Or are there other things that you implement along the way? What made me think about that is your candles.
Yes.
And I don't know why I jumped to that thought, but just the ambiance of being in your house and you have this candle. So tell me what like a one-on-one with you would look like.
It's really personal, so it's kind of what each person in that moment is needing. I mean, you were driving the bus as the client. You're driving the bus. I'm just
Right.
helping you guide the process. But some of the things that I have included is sound healing, which is one of my favorite things on the planet.
What is that?
So it's basically just using sound and music instruments to help facilitate a meditative state. Our bodies are literally wired to heal themselves, right? The problem is we live here.
Right,
We're doing this life thing. So the stress that's involved in just existing makes it so hard for our bodies to relax, and just the process of taking a deep breath for so many people does not even feel possible. So using sound healing, using music, using the instruments to help kind of get you into a place where you can, I don't mean meditate where you empty your brain and you don't think about things. I mean like
That sounds really nice.
I don't know if that's possible personally, but
I haven't figured that out. But if that's an opportunity, please sign me up.
Right. I think just getting yourself to it, getting your body to relax even just a little bit, where your shoulders kind of drop down. You pull your tongue off the roof of your mouth. You allow your hips to sort of plant themselves. Just getting into that state already allows your body to do what it naturally does, which is heal itself.
Right.
And just getting your physical body in that place makes it easier for your brain to function.
Absolutely.
We all know that when you're in a stress state, like logical thought kind of goes out the window. So even just trying to figure out how am I going to get through this divorce?
Right.
How am I going to survive another day of going through this?
Right.
When you're in that stress response, you can't.
Oh, no.
Nothing is happening.
Yeah.
Like, you're just trying to survive. When you can get your body into a place where, like, okay, it's real crappy. Like, it feels awful. This is super painful. And there is a way forward.
Right.
I just need to give my body a chance to just kind of relax for a second. So meditation, sound healing, that's something that I pull into a lot of the sessions as well.
I think a lot of people don't recognize, I don't know where I'm getting, I'd say a lot, but I think people may not always recognize how tied together your mental health, or I don't even want to say mental health, but your mental position is to your physical. You know, I will tell you now, by the end of the day, my shoulders are like that. I'm like, how did this happen? You know, I just haven't stopped for a moment. You know, your bodies are ready to go. And that's ingrained in us.
When you're on autopilot, you're not thinking about that. Like,
right.
You're just trying to get through the day.
Right.
So, no, I don't think we realize very often. I don't think we realize nearly half as often.
Right.
As it's actually happening.
Right.
That just the stress of existing just in this world, it affects your cognitive ability. That's just a fact. It just does. To the extent, I don't think we have a clue most of the time. We're just trying to get through the moment.
Yeah.
And so that's what's really special about creating a space like that for people, is that I want you to get through the moment, but I also want you to have some real information that you can grab onto to problem solve. Because that's not going to happen when you're in this other place. You're just trying to survive.
Yeah.
So meditation and sound healing is something that I bring in. The candles came into that because I used to make them for like my family for Christmas. And it was just like a crafty thing I liked doing. But then I was using candles during my own meditation practice, and it dawned on me, how cool would it be to use a physical product to introduce this business to people? Because how would they know I exist unless they need a life coach or know someone that has gone to a life coach? You know what I mean?
Right.
So I wanted to have something physical that I could put in somebody's hand, and then it could be just a candle that makes your house smell good, because they're delicious, y'all. Or
she is not wrong.
It could be like a meditative tool if you want to use it for that.
Get you some lavender.
Yeah. Yes. And also, it's called Wild Souls Candles. What does that mean?
Right.
And
boom,
now we're talking about the business. Yeah.
That marketing did pay off.
Yes.
Just saying. So, I think just knowing that we have that kind of opportunity here to take part in that, whether it be hanging out with you and the dogs at home, to build a network, to have amazing smelling candles, you know, it all kind of works together, is pretty awesome. And if somebody wanted to connect with you, how would they do that?
So We have a Facebook and an Instagram. It's just Wild Souls Healing.
Mm-hmm.
I am currently not participating in any social media right now, personally.
Mm-hmm.
So what's on our Instagram and Facebook, everybody's welcome to look at it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even remember the last time that I posted something on there. But that's a way that people can sort of learn about the business.
Right.
The easiest way to reach me right now is email, and it's just jamie@wildsoulshealing.com.
I'll put that below.
Yeah, I also, like, I give out my phone number. People are more than welcome to text me and talk to me that way. But I'll come back on at some point whenever I want to. Now
Because this is part of it. This is
exactly
the
right.
authentically you.
That's right.
If you were going to give our viewers one tip on, like, this is something that you feel like was very helpful in your day to day, what would you give them?
Oh, I love that question. Just one.
You can give all you want. As long as that light's blinking on that camera, you can go. I will love tips for that.
Oh my gosh. Okay. I'm gonna tell you a speech that I give myself
Okay, I'm ready for it.
that I have found to be really, really helpful. I struggle with anxiety. I struggle with ADHD. I struggle with depression.
Mm-hmm.
I'm doing this life experience right along with everybody else. And one thing that I struggle with a lot, it comes up a lot, is, am I meeting the expectation? Whether real or imagined.
Right.
Am I meeting the expectation that all of these people or this person has of me?
Right.
Which really means, am I good enough?
Right.
And so something I like to do with myself is I just kind of take a deep breath, I close my eyes, and I imagine like 5 or 6 year old me.
Mm-hmm.
And adult Jamie, is sitting in front of 5 or 6 year old Jamie.
Mm-hmm.
And I just imagine she's like crying and she's nervous and like, what are they going to think about me? They don't like me. I'm
Right.
not enough, whatever. And I imagine myself that I reach down and I put my hands on either side of her face and I just look at her and I say, you are perfect. You are enough. I believe in you and you've got this.
Mm-hmm.
That compassion of just me showing that kind of grace to myself
Right.
so far can get me through any moment. So far it's fail proof.
Hey, if it works, I think trying things like that.
Yeah.
You know, because I think sometimes we are not as apt to try something because it doesn't sound logical. Like,
Sure.
how's that going to work? But giving it a try is not going to hurt. You know.
Well, and it immediately interrupts, like just that statement, you are perfect.
Right.
I grew up hearing nobody's perfect.
Right.
No,
Right.
everybody's flawed. Everybody screws up.
Right.
I mean, okay. But in that moment, what little Jamie needs to know
Mm-hmm.
is that she's doing the best that she can.
Yep.
She's giving
Yeah.
you all she got. So in
I
that
feel that.
sense, she's doing everything that she can possibly do. In that way, she is showing up perfectly,
Mm-hmm.
the best she can. That's what 5-year-old Jamie needs to hear.
Right.
And so it's just that instead of railing on myself, judging myself, trying to white knuckle myself into being who I think I'm supposed to be, it's just that moment of like, you're doing the best you can, and that's all you can do.
Right.
So in that way, you're perfect.
We're going to have to get that in quotations because we can quote that one, a Jamie Howard quotation in there.
Jamieism.
Yeah, we'll get a little coffee table book and
Aw.
put some of that. That would be actually really
That
cool.
would be sweet. I
Yeah,
love
or
that.
get some, like, put them on your candle lids.
Yeah. Oh, I love that.
Yeah. We're going to have a new Bass Capital
Yeah.
radio podcast
I
collaboration.
like it.
So you'll have, I have to figure out what scent it would be, though. And it can't be bass scent.
No.
Um,
Not fish scent.
No. We'll go back to the drawing board on that. But well, I think it's, again, I've said it 3-4 times. It's just amazing to have this right here in our community. And, yeah, I think it's needed. There's a lot of things going on in the world, and there's a lot of hard stuff. But knowing that you have a place to land, and again, you know, while you may not be for everyone, for those you are for, being able to reach out to you and connect and take advantage of this community that you've built is
Yeah.
just, I love it. And I have thoroughly enjoyed sitting here and getting
Me
to know your
too.
journey and, how you got here. And I'm thankful that, we got to experience you in the schools, and now the adults get to have a little bit of Jamie time too. But do you work with kids, by the
I
way?
do.
Oh, perfect. Okay, well, we can all enjoy.
Absolutely.
We can all enjoy the Jamie.
I get to work with kids. I work with couples.
Mhm.
I work with families. I mean, nobody's safe. Like everybody's,
I like
everybody's
that.
involved.
Nobody's safe.
It always starts. It's kind of funny. It always starts out. Well, typically it starts out with the mom
Mm-hmm.
will be like, "I need help. I'm struggling, just as a mom, just as a human."
Right.
And then ultimately, a lot of relationship stuff will come up, and so
Mhm.
she'll bring
Every time.
her partner in, and then we'll start working together. And then the kid comes in, and now we're doing the whole family. And
Oh, I love that. Like
It's
a little
my
family
favorite part of
portrait.
it, yes.
Oh, man. That's amazing.
Yeah, it's cool.
Well, I appreciate your time. We're going to leave you guys links below to
Yes.
be able to connect with Wild Souls Healing and all the things that Jamie does. And I will try to remember in those moments the Jamieism, which if you'll be all right with that, I'll leave that in the link
Absolutely,
below
yeah.
because sometimes we just need to hear that we're just doing the best that we can.
Yes.
And so until the next podcast, we will see you guys later. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.